Sony and Microsoft are finally starting to open up about their plans for the next generation of home consoles, and with this openness comes high expectations and hype. But based on our limited knowledge of the hardware inside these machines, what revolutions can we reasonably expect from not only Sony's PlayStation 5, but Microsoft's in-development next-generation Xboxes? Well, first off, when taking a look at the very broad specs that Sony has confirmed, it doesn't really give us a very clear picture into exactly what this future machine is capable of. But from what both Microsoft and Sony have confirmed is that CPU and GPU prowess will be more in line with desktop level hardware, rather than the repurposed mobile CPU technology that's featured in not only the base machines, but also in the more technically capable PS4 Pro and Xbox One X. More specifically, Sony has confirmed that an 8-core Zen 2 based CPU will be powering PlayStation 5, paired with a next-generation NAVI based GPU that will be compatible with 8K displays. Meanwhile, Microsoft has confirmed that the next-gen Xboxes will have a more balanced CPU to GPU power ratio, as well as 120Hz display support. Now, the optimist in me really wants to see these games running at 8K and 120 FPS, but the realist in me is screaming that these new machines aren't going to be anywhere close to powerful enough to brute force 8K rendering, or even 120Hz gameplay. If we really want to try and get an idea of what we can expect from the 9th console generation, look no further than the games we saw with the last-gen Xbox 360. This is Far Cry 3. Arguably one of the most graphically impressive games on this incredibly outdated hardware. Sure, it looks pretty awful at times, but keep in mind that this is what developers were able to extract from a 3-core PowerPC CPU and what was really an outdated 2003 era ATI GPU. Sure, its performance is pretty dreadful, and it's got some pretty chunky pixels, but when considering what it's running on, it's quite the technical marvel. Now compare this to Far Cry 5, running on a PC that's roughly equivalent to what I think we should expect from the PlayStation 5. And at 4K completely maxed out, we were able to get a rock solid 30 FPS. Now turn on dynamic resolution scaling and we're hitting 60. And this is on a PC running a Ryzen 3 1300X and a GTX 1070. Yeah, kinda impressive. Now going back to Far Cry 3 for a second, this was one of the most graphically impressive games available on the Xbox 360. Now compare that to Call of Duty Infinite Warfare. For all the criticism that this game got, it really is eye candy and is quite impressive from a technological standpoint. While Far Cry 3 on the Xbox 360 runs at a locked 704p, Infinite Warfare runs at a dynamic 1390 by 1080. On top of that, the COD game runs at twice the frame rate, while doubling its pixel count. This sort of improvement in not only graphics, but also gameplay is what I would constitute a generational leap. While the Far Cry games are arguably more complex pieces of software than your typical Call of Duty game, what matters in this comparison is the graphical fidelity. Side by side, these two games look like they are a generation apart, and even Far Cry 5 on the Xbox One X looks significantly more refined over Far Cry 3. But based on what we saw this generation, what can we reasonably expect from games running on next-gen hardware? Well, when moving from the Xbox 360 to the Xbox One, we saw games adopt tons of smart ways to free up system resources to be used to increase overall graphical fidelity. Features such as dynamic resolution scaling, temporal reconstruction, and even checkerboard rendering really have burst onto the scene in the past 5 or so years, and have been used extensively on hardware ranging from the Xbox One X all the way to the Nintendo Switch. It really has been a revolution on the technology side of things to try and allow developers to squeeze more performance out of these stagnant machines. But with the arrival of the next generation of consoles, I'm more or less expecting an evolution of already existing technologies, rather than a complete revolution of rendering techniques. We may see checkerboard rendering fall out of fashion as developers will have the resources to render native 4K frames, but dynamic resolution and temporal filtering are here to stay, and they're becoming hard-coded features in many of today's forward-looking engines. Frostbite, Unreal Engine 4, and even the latest version of the IW engine all support advanced performance-saving techniques in the goal of increasing overall graphical fidelity. Physically based rendering and ray tracing are also the most recent revolutions in the gaming scene. And while physically based rendering has been implemented in a good amount of current gen games, us over here at Proceu Tech feel as if we're still at least a generation away from seeing ray trace global illumination and reflections making a notable impact on the console space. The hardware just isn't at the level of affordability yet to make DXR supporting GPUs available at a price that would make them a reasonable inclusion in consoles that are designed to be relatively inexpensive. But that's a heavy yet. We will eventually see consoles support for DXR at some point in the future. Maybe we'll even see a mid-generation refresh of the PS5 that packs the hardware necessary to make ray tracing a viable feature. But for now, voxel-based volumetric lighting and global illumination will continue to be adequate for almost every single game currently in development, and we don't see the widespread adoption of DXR-capable hardware to make its inclusion in every game worth it for at least the next year or two. For now, based on what we know of the PlayStation and to a lesser extent the Xbox 2, we should be expecting higher fidelity graphics spearheaded by a widespread adoption of physically based rendering. Resolution should also improve over the high-end PS4 Pro and Xbox One X to support native 4K rendering, and see developers gradually drop performance-saving measures such as checkerboard rendering in favor of a sharper native image. But we'll really just have to wait to get more details from both Microsoft and Sony. For all we know, our expectations could be blown out of the water, and we really could be getting an 8K 120fps console at last. But tell us what you think. What are you expecting from the next generation of consoles? Are you expecting more of the same, or do you want there to be a graphical revolution to finally bring photorealistic graphics into your living room? Thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe, and click the bell icon so you'll be notified about all our future uploads. Also, I would like to take a moment to tell you about our community Discord server. If you want to talk to me personally or to other enthusiastic members of the community, then the community Discord server is the perfect place to do so. Plus, we've got a surprise coming that we're gonna announce first to the Discord. If you enjoyed this video and also want a special private Discord rank, please also consider joining our Patreon. For as little as $1 per month, you can get an inside look into the behind the scenes work that goes into these videos, and you can also work with me directly to decide video topics and help write scripts. If you're interested in supporting us, the link to our Patreon is in the link in the description. So once again, thank you for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.